Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joseph Banks. I'm the Assistant Director for Career Design Center here at Utah State University and the dedicated career coach for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. I just want to start off today by thanking everyone who's here, as well as any future listeners watching this on YouTube. Our digital takeout series is a great opportunity to hear from our USU alums, talk about their experience, and discuss the opportunities that await many of our CHaSS students. So before we begin, I want to let everyone know that they can use the chat feature to ask any questions to the speaker, and that we also have Sarah monitoring those questions to ask after the first part of the discussion. So now I'm going to turn the time over to Andrea to introduce our guest today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe, and welcome, audience. We're so glad to have you back with us after taking a hiatus this summer. So welcome to today, our first installment of the Digital Takeout series for fall of 2021. And I think we have a great guest who's going to set the bar high for our series as we proceed this semester. So let me tell you a little bit about her, and then I will be turning the time over to her to hear more from her. Cherie Mockli is a licensed clinical social worker located in Salt Lake City, Utah. Ms. Mockli specializes in the treatment of trauma and is trained in EMDR group protocol, and mind-body medicine. She has worked with a wide variety of communities and individuals, including refugee community members, asylum seekers, military veterans, sexual assault survivors, survivors of complex trauma, and survivors of grief and loss. Ms. Mockli uses mindfulness, a strengths-based approach, and humanistic perspective in her work with clients. She is a firm believer that her clients are the experts of their own experiences. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and I'm going to start by asking you, Cherie, to tell us just a little bit about your history and how you came to your position. Just tell us a little bit more about what made you decide to pursue the line of social work as your career. And with that, I will turn the time over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So I did create a PowerPoint presentation, so I'll pull that up. Okay, so I kind of feel like I have to be honest about my upbringing. Both of my parents were social workers when I was growing up. So my father worked in federal criminal justice, so he actually worked on the Native American reservations down in southeastern Utah, doing probation work. So I spent a lot of summers growing up spending time on the reservation in Monument Valley and Bluff and Blanding area. And my mom was a school social worker when I was growing up, so I followed her around a lot and I grew up surrounded by social workers. I did go to the University of Utah, and I got my background is in fine arts. I was actually a modern dance major. And after I graduated with my BFA, I got jobs working in schools. I was a dance and art teacher for a couple of years. And after doing that, I guess I was just drawn back to my parents' line of work. And I left the school I was working at and just wanted to be more involved in diverse school programs. I got a job in the Title VII program, which is it's changed now, but at the time it was Title VII, which is the Indian Education Program. I worked in English language learner programs, after school programs, and I did mentorship for students who were applying to college post high school education. I was helping them write their biographies and fill out FAFSA forms. And as I got to know those students in the English language learner program, I just knew that I needed to do something more. I was hearing stories from these students and just watching their work ethic, and I think it just inspired me and energized me. And I knew that I was just kind of destined to go back for a master's in social work. So I this is actually from the English language learner program and the after school programs. So I've kind of always used movement in the work that I do because that is a part of my background. It seems to have a connection and it works. And so in the after school programs, one of my favorite things was just engaging students in movement. We did a lot of dancing, and it was mostly them sharing with me. It wasn't the other way around. It was me really just wanting to learn from the students, learn about the foods that they ate or they enjoyed, and learning about movement and just everything that I could about these students. We even did these cultural exchanges, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Um, that young person, he's from the Middle East, and we did an exchange out on the Ute reservation with Native American students. So the students I was working with shared their cultural traditions, and then the Ute students from the high school out there shared with us. It's a really cool experience. So this was kind of leading up to my master's degree, and I just wanted to be more competent. And then in my master's program, I felt extremely fortunate because I was able to spend 2 years at the Child and Family Support Center, which I believe is now the Family Place. When I was up there, it was the Child and Family Support Center, and I got 2 solid years there, which, looking back on that, was perfect for me. It was just, I just got the clinical experience that I wasn't really anticipating when I was working there. And that was with Janae Sorensen, and I also did groups with Dr. Diane Graham. And I was also fortunate enough to go to India with Dr. Hughes. I was her research assistant for 2 summers. We went and did group work in a psychiatry clinic in Sahara district, Maharashtra. We did a photo voice project with the group that we worked with. And I also did a little bit of research regarding just women and different social issues that the West was observing in India at the time, and just getting perspective from the actual communities that we were visiting with. And then while I was at Utah State as well, I started, I got involved with a refugee needs assessment. So again, just more research. And that was partnered with the Utah Division of Workforce Services, and I got to work with Dr. Lucero as well as Lorian Belton in that. And Lorian Belton and Dr. Lucero, I know both had a pretty significant role in creating the CRIC organization that's up there, the CASH Refugee and Immigrant Connection. These are just a couple of photos I thought would be fun to share of my time and my practicums when I was in India. And then following my MSW program, doing the kind of work that I had been doing before my master's degree, I just knew I wanted to work with, again, I just wanted to be immersed in various communities. I was able to get a job with Utah Health and Human Rights, which is actually, there's a consortium of torture treatment centers across the United States that people might not be familiar with. So these are asylum seekers, refugees, and immigrants who have experienced torture for political reasons, or for gender reasons or sexual identity reasons. I worked with people from all over the world in this organization, and this really was trauma boot camp. When I worked at this organization, it'll probably come up a lot because it was a very special time for me, but it was a place where I just knew I needed to learn as much as I could about the best approaches to trauma. And so while I was here, I really pushed to get trained in EMDR. And I also did several trainings in Portland, Oregon with, his name is James Gordon, and he's created it's just a mindfulness-based group. And we ran those groups all of the time at Utah Health and Human Rights. Very skills-based groups, meditative-based groups. And after working there for 4 years, I did have a child, and, working 10 hours a day, 5 days a week didn't feel like something I could necessarily keep up with a new baby. So I kind of recognized that I needed a bit of a change. I worked at Compass Counseling and Consulting. I became the clinical director there and continued just trying to learn as much as I could about trauma. And I'm still in that boat. Um, and starting in February of just this year, so just several months ago, I started my own business. So now I'm a lone wolf practicing solo, and I've had clients who have followed me from Utah Health and Human Rights. So I'm still able to work with some of the community members that just have a really special place in my heart. But I also have been able to build connections with other community members that I just, I, as you will hear in this presentation, I am so passionate about what I do and just absolutely love what I do. And I get to work with military veterans at this point, as Andrea said, and, sexual assault survivors. Yeah, I kind of get the whole spectrum of trauma, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Oh, these are just a couple of, so the photos I'm sharing with you are actually photos. These were from a Deseret News article. So permission has been given by, like when I'm sharing photos today, these are photos that I do have permission to share. When I was at Utah Health and Human Rights, we had our clients agreed to have a journalist come in and take photographs. So when I was at Utah Health and Human Rights, we did knitting groups because we worked with so many different languages. Knitting was a way that we could all come together, and we didn't necessarily need language to communicate. We could use our hands. And at these groups, we drink tea, we just be together. But it was also something, for a lot of clients who immigrate here, they become extremely isolated, especially the elderly members of these communities. They're placed in housing, that just might be separated from people that they knew in refugee camps. They can't access each other. And so with this group, we had a whole network of volunteers who would drive women to the groups. But then it was something too that our women got so good at. They were so good at knitting, and that's all they would do with their time at home. And they'd say, we turn on the TV, but we can't understand anything. They not having the language skills, they were so isolated and just became extremely depressed. And so this was a wonderful group. It started off real slow, but we just were persistent. And by the end, they still do this group at UHHR, and I think at least 20 women show up every week for this knitting group. It's pretty amazing. So I will stop sharing right now and let Andrea ask follow-up questions, but thank you for letting me share my startup here, my prologue. Oh, sorry, Joe, it's you.
Yeah, no, all right, thanks, Cherie. Yeah. Yeah, we have quite a few questions here. One, I mean, social work in particular is one of the most popular majors that we have, programs that many of our students are in. And so one of the questions that would be, what types of experiences and skills should these students be looking for while they're in school right now that can help them, help make them a little bit more prepared for the career in this field?
I think so. I had a heads up on some of these questions, so I did add these on slides if that's okay. So I think, so this was kind of my instinct in answering this question when I got it from you, Joe. I think, when you are in school and even following school, even where I'm at in my career, it's okay to not know. And I know that your professors are probably reiterating this to you, but it really is, it's okay to not know. And I mean, that's why we are, I think that's why people are drawn to this profession. It is always evolving. It is always changing. There are always shifts in methodology. There are always new approaches or new perspectives. So this field is something that is it's exciting because it's always bringing up new ideas, and I just encourage everyone, to kind of notice what you're drawn toward. For me, it really was just working with diverse communities, and I feel like that probably had a lot to do with my upbringing. Um, I remember from, like, I can describe from a really young age being, being on Native American reservations, Navajo reservation in particular, um, being a little white child on those reservations, I kind of had this sense, that I understood that my presence wasn't trusted immediately, and that was okay. And I kind of learned that I couldn't just tell people to trust me, that my actions, my behavior, my genuine interest in just kind of understanding and getting to know someone else, would just kind of demonstrate more of my intentions than anything I could have ever said. And I just knew that, like, I don't know how to describe it. I just knew that my presence alone, sometimes made people uncomfortable. And I can understand why, from a historical context. And I feel like that was something I started to grasp from a really young age. And I think it's because of the experiences I had with my parents, and the work that they did. But I think, something that I thought of too is Dr. Dye saying, feel the fear and do it anyway. So not knowing, but still putting yourself out there. Finding the mentors that you feel drawn toward, offering to be teaching assistants, research assistants, trying to find those opportunities, or even connecting with other programs. So when we went to India, I was able to engage in research like social work, but we partnered with Westminster College and went with people from the English department. So sometimes you partner with other programs to make things work. So if you have particular interests and there are other programs also doing that work, seeing how you can become involved. And I think one of the things I learned early on after I graduated, taking that role at UHHR, like I said, I was working 10 hours a day. I know some social workers work more, but it was, like I said, it was boot camp, and it was the best thing I could have ever done. And so kind of pushing yourself to do challenging things. And I've supervised students. Most of the students I've supervised in my career so far have been from the University of Utah, and I've told them, take a job that's going to push you and push you out of your comfort zone, so that you are going to learn as much as you can about yourself and the world around you. And then, like I wrote here, once you have put in your dues, trust yourself. You're going to be guiding other people in your career. You will be. I didn't think I would be when I was sitting in your shoes when I was an MSW. I did not think I would be in leadership positions or supervisory positions. And I remember Professor saying, you will be. And that ends up being very true. But, like, when it is your time, guiding other people well and really supporting other people in this profession and supporting diversity in this profession, those are things I feel extremely passionate about.
That's really great, Cherie. And that does lead us nicely into our next question, which is still going to talk about passion and about talking with populations that are outside of your own. And I think you made a really great point about, how you have to earn the trust of someone that you're working with, especially in your field, and how important that is. Your work with refugee populations is, I think, of particular interest to a lot of students that we find here in our college who are interested in community building and humanitarian efforts. And can you tell us a little more? I know you've touched on this to some extent, but can you tell us a little more about how you actually got involved and what you find most rewarding about this aspect of your work?
Yeah, let me see. I'm gonna pull up the um, uh, so this part might make me emotional, especially when it comes to working with those populations. Sorry, that's so weird. I think what's so wild to me is, this might sound so bizarre, but the more that I've engaged in trauma therapy specifically, um, I think as professionals, right? When you're a professional of any kind, whether it's more in the medical realm or like the social sciences or just sciences in general, I think we have these ideas, right, of professionalism, which are extremely important. But when you are working with community members from around the world, um, therapy is a very Western concept. It is a Western idea. It is a Western creation. And I remember reading a book. I don't know if this has been recommended to you, and I don't know if I finished the whole thing, but it was pretty funny. It's called "If You Meet a Buddha in the Road, Kill Him or drive him over" or something. But it was just this, it's actually a social work book, and if you're an older social worker from like the 70s, I think that's when this book came out. And the premise of this book, the "If You Meet a Buddha in the Road," I think the premise of it was, they kind of go through the history, like, where do we come from, where does this idea of therapy come from, and kind of walk through, like even people like spiritual guides, like if you were to think about a tribe and you think about a spiritual guide within the tribe, right? That is the person you might go to for advice. I actually found myself in situations I was not anticipating when I was working with refugee families from different tribes from Africa. And I had this incredible interpreter. And when you're working with populations that are non-English speaking, the interpreter is essential, because it is no longer a relationship between you and the client. It is a relationship between you, the client, and the interpreter, and everybody needs to be on the same, everyone needs to be comfortable in this triad. So that makes working with non-English speaking, which and for me, right, I'm not speaking Kinyarwanda, I'm not speaking Arabic, and so having really good interpretation was just, it is essential. An in-person is ideal. But I remember I turned to my interpreter in this experience with this family from a tribe from Eastern Congo. And I asked him, I said, I think they want me to tell them what to do in their marriage, as they probably would have expected a tribal leader to just tell them what they were going to do and how it was going to be. And so working with various community members, you start to realize that they own, it goes with that saying, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. And so when you're working with populations that are not from the West, and specifically Europe and America and Canada, what is a therapist? What does this mean? Like, are you a tribal leader? Are you a religious leader? I'm trying to understand. And, I remember, I wrote this in the second paragraph, right? I was referred to as a sister, as a mother, as an auntie, as a daughter, as a granddaughter, sometimes, depending on who I was working with. And clients would tell me that I wouldn't just share what I am sharing with you, the most horrible parts of my life, the most terrifying parts of my life, without me feeling that you were a family member, because I wouldn't just share this with anyone. And they would say, you know, they must know me like we have the same blood in order to trust me. And so the only way they could make sense of our relationship was to give me a familial term. And in the West, right, we like, well, this isn't ethical, like you can't call me. But for me, I had to really understand where my clients were coming from, and sometimes just understand that that's how they were able to make sense of this relationship that they had with me. And in my experiences working with, I think this is why I'm so drawn to working with people who are so, you know, have such different backgrounds from me, is because, you know, even working with military vets after I left working with refugees and asylum seekers, I feel like as in the positions that we find ourselves in as social workers and as clinicians, to be able to connect with another human being that you would never anticipating being able to connect with, genuinely, I can't describe it any other way than just feeling that that is extremely, it's like a spiritual experience for me. Um, I don't know many other contexts in which these types of relationships form. And you will all experience them if you are planning to be a clinician. You will have clients tell you, I have never said this to anyone in my life before. Like I am sharing something with you that is so terrifying, and I have held on to my entire life and have never been able to share that with anybody. But I'm finally able to share that with you. And I just feel honored that I get to be a part of this experience with someone else who was on their journey, in their healing, or just in recovery, whatever their journey is. And so that's the most rewarding part of what I do. It makes me feel like I am alive.
Oh, thank you. All right. So, and this next question, it kind of leads into that, you know, being able to hear all those experiences and stuff. Obviously, you know, being a social worker, you're likely to involve many, you know, talking to people with many difficult situations. So what do you do to help prepare yourself and protect your own mental health so that you can continue to help others?
Um, this is a really great question. And I am a very honest person, so I don't know why I wouldn't be honest on this one. um, I so I I'll stop sharing for a sec too, because this is really personal. So when I was working at UHHR specifically, and this actually started in my practicum at the Child and Family Support Center. Depending on which road you decide to take, and social work has many roads, right? Like we can go into medical social work, as my father did. You could go into corrections, right? You could work in the prison system, you could do probation. Social work has so many pathways, but I guarantee you, as a human being working with other human beings, you are going to encounter stories you never imagined you would hear. And I'm talking about trauma, I'm talking about loss and grief, just being human, right? Being human is, we all experience trauma in one form or another, right? And in the field of social work, it's inevitable. And when I was doing my training at the Child and Family Support Center, I was absorbing material, and I had never absorbed that kind of material before in that way. You know, we were working with childhood survivors of sexual assault and physical abuse, various types of abuse, but the subject matter I started dreaming about it. I was having nightmares. That was my first experience, kind of experiencing like secondary PTSD, secondary trauma. And then when I started working at UHHR, I was seeing 8 clients a day. And again, we're talking, I was working with torture survivors. I was working with people who, I won't go into the details, but I was working from people who had been detained, had been, systematically tortured, and for long periods of time sometimes. There were various backgrounds that I was encountering with, and I was having regular nightmares early on in my career, regular. And I would wake up in the morning and I knew that those dreams were not my dreams. They were not my dreams, but I was having them and I was experiencing them. And I was coming home from work and I just wanted to drink whiskey. That was like, just like, I didn't, at the time, I honestly did not have enough knowledge about trauma myself. I was in deep waters with it, but I didn't have enough knowledge even at the time to recognize what was happening to me. And I started to see a therapist. If anyone is, I have a mentor down here in Salt Lake City, and she's like, if your therapist is not seeing a therapist, that might be a red flag. But I started talking with mentors. I started working with a therapist myself, and I started I was going home and I was trying to dissociate. I was trying to turn it off. I was trying not to feel the weight of everything I was hearing day in and day out at my job. And I think after recognizing what was happening to me and recognizing that I was using, I was using whiskey or beer, whatever it was, to try to turn off my work day. And I think getting the awareness was extremely helpful. But I also think, so I wrote some things down on this one, because this is a really good question. So awareness and mindfulness. In my work with trauma, my number one goal is to help my clients create more awareness between their brains and their bodies. Because what I have learned to find is that the brain is very judgmental of what is happening for the body. And so I think in my brain was telling my body, like, what's wrong with you? Like, why can't you do this? Like, why can't you handle this? And then I think I had to remember coping strategies that work for me. So being outside, exercising, eating healthy, cutting out the alcohol was huge for me. Like, just, I recognizing the way I was using it, and then being aware of that, and then just being like, I can't use it this way. So when I'm feeling this way, I need to take my dog for a walk, or I need to sit in the backyard and read. Having boundaries as well. I think I went back to my employer and I think I told my employer, I don't think I can see 8 different clients every single day. I don't think I can. How can I work my schedule so that I am not burning out? So making boundaries with employers, sometimes if you start to recognize that burnout and that secondary PTSD, you have to be communicating with whoever your supervisor is or whoever your mentors are. And I remember when I was at the Child and Family Support Center, I told my supervisor about my dreams, and she was very helpful, very compassionate about it. It was pretty shocking. And then I think structuring your time, finding balance in your professional life and your personal life, not forgetting your relationships. I remember during that time I was having a really difficult experience and just wanting to come home and numb out. I wasn't connecting with other people. I wasn't hanging out with the people that I love or care about. I really was isolating. And so oftentimes when you think about those PTSD checklists, if you're submerged in trauma and you start exhibiting, like you go through those checklists, and I was like, oh, oh, that's me. It is really important to take care of yourself in this profession. And now I really structure my time. And when I'm done with work, I'm done with work. I just have to be. And I don't work on weekends. I need those recovery days. I know that's not always possible in this profession, but when you get yourself there, like if you can take Saturday and Sunday off, take it off and take it off completely.
I think that's really great advice, and we really do appreciate you speaking so candidly to your experiences. Um, and I'm going to continue with that candor by asking you a question that we hope you won't find insulting. It was a question I heard a lot as well when I was a high school teacher, which is, dealing with the perceptions that others have about your work. And social work, is known for being a service to others and a great service to others, but it's not necessarily known for its financial benefits. While we recognize, though, as you have already rightfully pointed out, that social work is a wide field and that people can do a lot of things with it. But what would you say to the critics or those who say, well, you're not going to earn a lot of money from that, and but it's requiring you to go to school, and in your case to get an advanced degree? If you've got someone who is interested in social work and hearing those same sort of arguments from family or others, what advice would you have for them, or what would you say to counter those arguments?
I actually love that question. I had a great aunt Ida who was a nurse, and she'd always say that, why do you want to be a social worker? You don't make any money. um, so I guess I don't know. I don't know if I'm just unusual. I guess I have always been more attracted to doing what I feel passionate about versus the monetary gains in it. So I don't think that, as a young person moving through the world, which, oh man, like I was serving tables through my graduate degree on top of all that stuff. That was how I paid my bills. Is I served tables. I worked at Cafe Sabor up there. I worked at Le Nonne up there. Thank you, Sierra, if you're listening. It was a great advancement from Cafe Sabor. But I yeah, so but I love this question. I actually created this because I wanted to give students some resources that perhaps they've not heard of, and I don't think I heard of them until after I graduated. And so if you are a student and you're thinking about post-graduation, I want you to look into these for yourself. Um, so, I would encourage all of you to look into student loan forgiveness programs. There's a public service loan forgiveness program, and that program, the last I was aware, and I was actually, when I was working at Utah Health and Human Rights, you have to work for a nonprofit. You do have to work for an agency that is like fits within the public service realm. Sometimes that could be schools. I know a lot of attorneys take advantage of this particular loan forgiveness program. But if you are interested in working for like DCFS, or you're interested in working with refugee nonprofits, or you're interested in working for like the VA, things like that, just if you have an interest and it is in the public health sphere, check this out, because they will forgive up to $50,000 if you do commit to the 10-year, it's a 10-year program. The other one that I was going to sign up for and was really, really considering, I wanted to take a job up in Alaska in Anchorage. There are National Health Service Corps programs across the United States. I remember there even being some of these programs at the Bear River Mental Health up there in Logan. But these are sites that are nationally approved, And if you commit to 2 years of service, so they have a lot of these on Native American reservations because they have a hard time getting social workers, medical providers in those areas because they're so rural. But if you can commit to 2 years, they do loan forgiveness through this program. It's pretty awesome. So check that out too. There's a whole list of sites. So that's kind of like the student loan forgiveness. If you're in that boat, just maybe think about that, those options. I also, I also think that I just encourage you all to trust this process. So if I don't know where you're at, but for me, right, I had 2 years of my master's program, and then following master's program, 2 years of full-time practice to receive an LCSW. You're still a student, you're still learning, just like those doctors that go into residency, right? Like they're doing hands-on experience, they're doing the real work, but they're doing it under supervision, and they're just seasoning their skills and just trusting that the more you just season yourself and get better at what you do, you're going to advance yourself. You're going to find yourself in those clinical director roles. You're going to find yourself in the supervisory roles in which you will get paid more, or you should demand to get paid more. I also encourage everyone, if you find what you're passionate about, if that's CBT, if that's, DBT, whatever kind of training just speaks to you. For me, it was somatic work. Somatic, EMDR, I do trauma. Everything that I try to absorb is in the realm of just the best trauma treatment I can find. And just get yourself really immersed in what you want to do. And trust me, it's going to pay off, because if you can kind of season yourself in something specific, you'll find yourself in agencies in which people are looking to you as the expert in that particular modality. I promise you. I had no idea when I left UHHR and worked for this other agency that had 12 clinicians that I would be the only one there that had trauma experience specifically. And everyone else was like, I don't know how to do trauma work, or, what does that even mean? I don't know what to do when I have clients tell me they have trauma. And meanwhile, I was like, oh, really? I know something. And I had no idea that, that was going to pay off following my time at UHHR. And then once you start to make your way, just not remembering too, private practice is an option, but when you start your own business, you kind of get to do what you want with that. I am loving what I am doing right now. I have some clients from UHHR that have followed me, and I have specific clients that can't pay for services. And I'm in a position where I can say, I can do some pro bono work for people that I feel it's really important to help out, because I am making money in my private, practice. I can kind of balance these things out, continue to do the work that I love to do. Not that I don't love doing private practice, because I really do. I have been surprised at how much crossover there has been for me in my specific work. But I just feel like I get to create what I want. And my goals moving forward, one day I want to have my own trauma center. And I want to pay it forward. I want clinicians that just really know what they're doing in a specific field. If they're drawn towards trauma treatment and just being really good, really, good isn't the right word, but just really seasoned in this, this arena. I just want to help support people. I want there to be even better clinicians than myself. I want to pay it back, and I want it to spread. And I think too, I've worked in places where I have demanded pay raises, and I thought I have been, owed pay raises, and there have been decisions I've had to make in which, I have to pay my bills. My family has changed over time. I'm not a young single person that's just caring for myself anymore. And I think you get to certain places in your life where your situation does change, and it's okay to make decisions for yourself. I had a mentor at Utah Health and Human Rights. She was phenomenal. I don't know if anyone recognizes the name Kathy Supiano, but she's incredible. I think she's at the University of Utah. She does a lot of grief work. But I remember her always saying to us, and we were all young female clinicians at this organization, and she would say, you guys don't have to validate poverty. We are social workers. It is our job to empower people, to help lift people out of poverty. And for you to get paid these wages is validating poverty. And so within this profession, we need to advocate, we need to support moms in this profession. We don't need to just hire diversity, but we need to understand what diversity in organizations looks like, and understand how we can best support it, not just hire it, but support diversity, if I'm making any sense. But I think as you find yourself moving along in your career, not forgetting these things, these values of not validating poverty for yourself. And there have been times in my career where I've had to just really draw some firm lines and understand, like, I need to be financially compensated for what I'm doing. And that has, because my circumstances have changed, that has pushed me to take other jobs in my career or shift my position. But like I said, now that I'm where I'm at, I can create what I want, and I can do the pro bono work with populations that I still want to be a part of. And I can take insurance payments, and that's great too.
Well, thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to our events intern, Sarah Smith. Sarah, if you'd like to introduce yourself and take over today's Q&A.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Like she said, I'm Sarah Smith. I'm the events intern at the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I am a journalism student, and I'm really excited to ask a couple of questions. And if you have any, drop them in the Q&A box and we'll ask them before we wrap up. But our first question is, what are some good skills to develop in college to help you be successful and grow in the right direction in your career and kind of find your niche while you're still in college years and still figuring things out?
Yeah, I think, I understand everyone is in a different position. And so, I think there are many students that kind of are still trying to figure out, like, what avenue they want to take, or what really sparks their passion. I guess I feel pretty fortunate that was just kind of something I kind of always knew where I wanted to be and the communities that I wanted to work with. But if you are still feeling lost or confused, I would just encourage you to try something new, and to kind of pay attention to, like, when you're in classes and you're learning about different populations, right? When you're talking about substance use, or community, clients that might be struggling with substance use, or you're talking about mental health disorders that probably more in the realm of bipolar or schizophrenia. um, just kind of noticing what kind of sparks, again, the only way I can describe it, and this is probably from my work in trauma treatment, is just what makes you feel most alive. Like when you're hearing about it, when you're meeting with people who are coming from this specific vein, like, what is it that makes you as a person just feel most alive and most drawn toward? And I think this is probably true for a lot of social workers, right? Like, we might get into this field because we have an intimate connection with someone, or we have an intimate experience with a very specific challenge. Like, I know a lot of people who have overcome substance use disorder, and they return to the profession because they know that their experience is going to really speak to people who are struggling, and they're going to be able to connect with people in a way that perhaps someone that has never struggled with a substance use disorder, they can do that. Or someone might have an intimate connection with someone who struggled with an eating disorder, or struggled with suicidal ideation, or like had these specific challenges that we just in those moments. And that I think I had this experience with a student in the English language learner program. This girl, man, she was going to succeed and nothing was going to stop her. And her English was not great, but that didn't matter. She was going to do it. She was just so resilient. And I had worked with her for 2 years, and I sat down to help her with her biography, and she told me her background. And I could not believe what she had gone through. Gives me chills thinking about it right now. For her to get to where she was, just, I couldn't believe that someone who had gone through all of that just had so much passion for life and so much drive to succeed. And nobody was gonna stop her. And I just, that made me feel alive. And so just finding those moments for yourself as you're going through these, these years in school.
That was awesome. Thank you. Our next question is, do you have any advice for any students looking to travel and learn more about different cultures and gain experience in that way?
Yeah, so God, I think of that resource I gave you, that the National Service Corps. If you are someone who is really interested in kind of being immersed in a different community than the one that you perhaps grew up in or are most familiar with, that would be a real good opportunity. It'd be 2 years. You could move up to Anchorage, Alaska, and work in the Alaska Native Hospital, as I was really excited to do at one point, and sometimes still regret that I didn't do it. But I think they're, seeking out those opportunities. I know that those opportunities always don't just get dropped in your lap. But I think that it is possible to make those things happen for yourself. So if there is a particular part of the world you feel more interested in, that may require you taking a trip to what is it called? I want to call it like the passport office at the Utah State University. There's a study abroad program. The study abroad program, and like I said, talking with professors within your own programs, and just because you never know what your professors are up to or who they are connected with, perhaps in completely different programs, who are doing really cool things in different parts of the world, that you're like, hey, can I do research with you, or can I tag along and be of help in some way? Doing research is, again, I think probably the first place to go would be your professors, mentors at USU. Yeah, because they probably have connections, and they probably know if they're not doing those things, they'll probably be able to point you in a direction of someone who is doing those things. And it doesn't have to be social work only, right? Like, that's not happening in the program right now. There's definitely someone who's doing that in a different program. Would
Awesome.
you agree with that, guys? Is that Andrea? Joe?
Awesome. I was really touched when you talked earlier about building connections with the people that you work with. And so we were wondering if you have any advice for building relationships, both professionally and with the people that you work with.
Yeah. I think I'll go back to the biography that Andrea said in the beginning, right? I I think that this is the philosophy I learned from Dr. Dye when she was my mentor when I was up there at USU. Is, you know, people really are the experts of their own experiences. And it was really, you know, my experience abroad was exactly what I needed. When I was in India, you know, little white girl from Utah, I quickly realized I don't have anything to offer. I don't have anything to, I mean, what do I have to offer here? And I quickly learned you know, very simple things, right? Like Westerners, we want to create pamphlets with pretty images and words on them and pass them out. When I was in India, most of the population is illiterate. So you pass a pamphlet with words on it, we're not getting very far. And I came to learn that in India, a lot of the way that things were discussed or talked about amongst communities, especially health matters or mental health matters, was through performance theater. It was through movement and theater that people would engage in conversations. And it was really cool because, you know, when I was in that experience, I was the student 100%. 100%. And that was the role I took on, was I just want to observe and learn and hear and see as much as taste. When people share food with you, eat food with them. Across the globe, that is how people communicate, is through food. And when I was working at UHHR, I got food all the time. I would get food daily, very good food, so it was nice. But, you know, that was how they showed appreciation. That was how they communicated with me, was through these means that maybe as Westerners we might not see as communication, right? But that was how they were trying to express what they wanted to express with me and connect with me. And they wanted to see me smile. And that was something, you know, it was, for me working with clients, it is this kind of two-way street. It's not just me as this professional expert telling this person what to do or telling them what I think is best. I think people inherently know what is best, but they need that kind of support and encouragement and guidance. And they need someone who really just listens and hears. That was a really long answer. I'm a long-winded person, I'm sorry. Let me know when we're out of time.
Thank you so much. We actually have just one last question. And they're asking, with all that you have accomplished, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, well, yeah, you know, this has just been kind of a new thing for me, but I've been connecting with trauma treatment experts from around the nation. There's a woman she's up in Fairbanks, Alaska. Her name is Linda Ty. She does a lot of somatic work, a lot of trauma-informed somatic work. And so I just, my goal is to really just continue to be a student. I want to continue to learn as much as I can about the field, especially what I'm immersed in. That will be every one of your journeys as well. There's always something new to learn, and I really do want to start. You know, I just kind of have started feeling this desire to start giving back and to start. I've done supervision. I've supervised some MSW students, and I've supervised some people who were working towards their L. And I would love to season clinicians and have my own center at some point in time, in which I just feel like we've got the most seasoned clinicians we possibly can in this, you know, in just torture treatment, or not torture treatment, but trauma treatment. Sorry.
Oh, All right. Well, wow, Cherie. Thank you so much for everything, all of that information. I especially wanted to add, your take on the mental health. That I was thinking, that could apply to several other positions as well. People doing those tips and things that would benefit them as well too. So yeah, I wanted to thank you so much for everything that you shared with us today.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks, that's me struggling to find the mute button, mouse not coordinating with my hand. I want to echo Joe's sentiments, Cherie, and say thank you again for all that you've shared, and the fact that you shared not only your very personal and candid experiences, but that you also had some very practical advice for students. I love that you gave them ideas directly about programs that could enrich their experience as social workers, as well as help them pay for some of their schooling. So, I mean, great practical advice today. That's exactly as we had hoped, and you really did set the bar high. For those of you who've joined us today, I'd like to remind everyone that this is a series that will continue throughout the fall. Joe and I and Sarah will be back next month on October 22nd. We'll be talking about using language skills for life, and we'll be speaking with alumni who have gone on to use their language degrees in their professional practice. And if you have any questions or want to follow up with any of us that you heard from today, you can reach us as well at our email addresses. You can also follow the series on the Alumni Lunch Series page. You'll find more information there about all of the work that we do in the college to help close the gap between our students and our alumni. And with that, I really do want to thank again, Cherie Mockli for being our first guest of fall and for really helping us have a meaningful conversation around careers and career experiences, but also helping us to inform students in what is, one of our most popular, if not the most popular program in our college, which is social work. So this has been a really special conversation, and I thank everyone who took the time to participate in it today, and I hope that you'll come back and join us at a future program. So thank you, everyone.